These past few years have thrown the working world on its ear, from no one wants to work anymore to return to office policies, AI infusions, and yes, as we discussed, the death of DEI. We saw a corporate uprising in the 2020s and then a collective fizzle over the past 12 months. So where does that leave us? As Gen Z fully takes the seat in our working world and millennials head for the upper ranks, where do we go from here?
Welcome back to Looping You In, the Nova Collective podcast, where we say the quiet part out loud about work, working, bringing together all of our favorite topics like leadership, learning, community, and connection. I'm Jasmine, and I'm here with my co-host, Brynne.
Hello.
And we're the Nova Collective. Or at least part of it. So just in case you forgot, Nova is a learning and development, leadership, and communication consultancy that helps organizations navigate complexity. So on each episode of Looping You In, we're going to bring you behind the curtain at Nova and the conversations that we have when the AI transcriber is turned off, and the challenges our clients face on a daily basis, and what we're noticing in the learning and development space from our unique vantage point. So today is our second episode, and Brynne and I are joined by our special guest, Andy. Yay!
Hey, everyone.
Jasmine, I love that intro because once again, it sounds like if you like things and you have a job, this is the podcast for you.
If you work and you're currently working, this is yeah.
Or if you're not, but you'd like to have a job, also this is for you.
This is all of it.
Perfect intro. We're everything to everyone. Andy is here. Let's get to know Andy and jump right into it. We're going to jump right into Looping You In. If you listened to our first episode, you got some context for Nova, how Nova started, the point of view and foundation that Nova is rooted in. And we keep going down this podcast rabbit hole. Again, we're going to get to some more specific topics that are more on the nose when it comes to, you know, workplaces, L&D, communications, kind of hot topics in the working world. But we wanted to do this second episode, really kind of bringing us up to current moment. So we talked about DEI and woke at work, leaving the door, and you know where that left us and how we were sort of ahead of that, what we really wanted to do with Nova, and so that kind of supercharged us into where we are now. So that's why Andy, who's also a partner at Nova, is joining us because he's kind of a partner in the new Nova. And Andy, I want to ask you some questions about sort of your journey as Andy, not Nova partner necessarily, but get to know you on your journey that led you here so that folks can kind of get the sense of where you've been and where we are going. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, good. You should be able to answer all of these because they're about you.
No quizzes.
No?
But being quizzed, being grilled, I'm up for it.
Yeah, literally you can lie and I probably won't know. Maybe I will, but
it's true.
You can say
You've
whatever.
known me too long, Brynne.
I know. I actually would know. I actually would. Okay, so Andy, we're talking about working. What was your first like real job as a professional?
I mean, it was a semi-real job, but I was doing some temp work for NCR, National Cash Register, when it was part of AT&T and had some ridiculous company name, AT&T Global Information Solutions.
Oh.
Yes. I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea what they even did. I didn't even know what my department did. But I loved having a job out of college, even though it was not related whatsoever to my master's degree in playwriting or my year abroad of studying film production. But it was enough to get me out of the house, out of my parents' house. So we were all very happy. And it also introduced me to free cookies at a corporate event, which was exciting. And just generally some of the ridiculous things people do at corporations. I kept wondering, like, why do they do this? Why are they doing it like this? Why are they talking to each other like this? What do these words mean?
A whole new culture. And, you know, just full disclosure, Andy and I are from the same general area in Ohio. And so NCR was like big business back in the time.
I didn't know you were from Ohio as well, Andy.
Mm-hmm. We're close. Yeah. So we have a shared context in that, and National Cash Register, which I think you can imagine how that's doing right now.
They had to pivot. They really had to pivot again.
Yeah.
They were making ATM, so they had another moment too.
Yes.
They found a new place in the world.
This is all about reinvention, you all, from NCR to Nova, how we continue to stay relevant. Okay, so you were working NCR and getting your corporate indoctrination in South Ohio. When did you first meet? We talked in the last episode about the founders of Nova, of which I am one, kind of all meeting at the same time and space here in Chicago. When did you first meet the original Nova crew?
I ran into everyone in the 2010s. I followed my muse to Chicago. I wanted to follow and do improvisational comedy and then work day jobs during the day. Strangely, I fell in love with both of those things. So while I was studying improvisation, I started spinning what I was learning in corporate environments into the way that I would teach. So I was an educator in improvisation, also at the Second City where I met the other founders of Nova, ran into them and started doing some of the corporate to corporate outreach with them. So that often started as lightly customized corporate entertainment mixed with some team building, but then that team building became more and more intricate and became more supportive of leaders and started to look at aspects of inclusion. It started to look at aspects of what we can do for collaboration. And so I kind of followed those pieces, still using a lot of the tenets of improvisation, but also loving that the people that I met that would eventually become Nova were also the people who really practiced those. Well, it was not always true in a lot of the corporate environments that I was in. I could really see it in those people that I worked with. One of the reasons why I followed the love train to where we are now.
The love train.
So you talk about being a teacher, and I know you as a content designer and facilitator. How did you really hone your skills and craft in that space and become? I think that's what your real superpower is creating programs that are completely transformational for folks, and then also leading those rooms and really giving people aha moments. That's different than just I can teach an improv class. So how did that arc from teacher to master facilitator come for you?
I think it was two things. I think the one thread that really paid off later was my writing background. To be able to think of taking people through an experience from the written word, and it's different, but not completely dissimilar to learning design. You're writing an experience, you're writing stories, you're bringing scenarios, you're using storytelling in really deft ways. So that really helped. I got both the long form writing from a master's in playwriting, but I also got that sketch comedy approach as well. Short, sharp. How can we make it quick? How can we meet people's attention span? And then the second piece was just years spent in different classrooms adapting in the moment. Starting off a class and realizing this is not going to work. We're in the wrong kind of room. It's the group is all people over 50, and we're going to pivot in terms of some of the things we're going to do. The group is people over 80, which was sometimes the case. There were just things that you had planned. There was the kind of the path you had planned, and then there's the path that you were able to deliver in the moment. And so those two things, that ability to read the room, pivot, and create a learning experience in the moment, meshed with the preparation and kind of being able to imagine, here's how this will land. Here's what people will do. Here's where their brains are going to go. I think those two things really prepared me. And it also, in many ways, makes learning design, development, delivery, that perfect place where I get to use all those little superpowers.
That's awesome.
It's really cool.
So how did you go from that? It sounds like, you were doing a lot with the improvisational work and the corporate work there. How did you ultimately link up with the Nova folks? How did you come to be with us?
I was at Second City for almost 20 years overall. In any length of time in any environment, you start to bash up against the walls of you outgrow your container, and I was outgrowing my container, both creatively, but also in terms of where I wanted to take learning. And I was in an environment where I really had to kind of be the brand, be the Second City brand. And as much as I love the comedic aspect and the improv aspect, it was sometimes limiting in what I could be able to do. And it limited me as what I could bring in the room and how I was perceived as an expert. So I had to shed that. I partnered with another person from Second City, Scott Zoll, and we launched a company called Fair Play Communications to really, at the very beginning, we wanted to create these spaces where people could play in terms of learning environment, and there was a sense of fairness at the very root of it, and to be able to go into learning spaces that I hadn't been able to go to before. Support sales training in different ways, leadership training, aspects of inclusion that we weren't able to touch in what we were doing before, still keeping it experiential. So I liked that part of it, but I wanted to try on new things. I needed to shed my chrysalis and try something new. And I think that early on, and when you and I knew each other, Brynne, one of the things I said to you was like, give me the weird stuff. Give me the weird stuff. Give me the hard stuff. And that's always been kind of the way I've conducted myself. As soon as something feels comfortable, I'm like, I gotta throw myself in the deep end again. I have to try something harder. And so that was where I needed to go next.
I love that. I love that you're consistently challenging yourself. That's really cool.
I always regret it about a year later, but it sounds good in the moment.
Right.
He says, give me the hard thing. And then he's like, this is too hard.
Like, I gave you the hard thing.
But I know, I told you. The hard thing is often like, in those environments, you're like, this is the impossible thing that you've asked me to do. This is not challenging. It's not realistic. Andy was correct on all those points, so he passed.
Perfect. Thank you for answering all the questions factually. But we're going to shift a little bit to part 2 of the origin story. I know we talked a lot about the boom of DEI, the bust of DEI, and now we're going to zoom out a little bit and talk about the present moment. We talked even the last episode a little bit about how Nova had the foresight to start shifting gears before DEI started to disintegrate to what we know it as, or the word we can't even say out loud without it being a mess. And so let's talk a little bit about how this pivot and this wild moment in the DEI space turned into supercharging Nova instead of shrinking it. And I think that's the perfect segue after you mentioned Andy Fair Play. So
it was interesting. I think while Nova was recognizing that DEI, the conversation around DEI was changing, we were seeing the conversation around leadership development changing too. People were already starting to bake inclusion into aspects of leadership development as they were, I think, unpacking some of that more explicitly elsewhere or asking for it inside of leadership development. We were just seeing those trends happening and seeing how things were shifting even from how they were approaching leaders. There's always this back and forth in the marketplace. And now I've been around long enough to see it where it's like back to basics. Let's get back to those technical skills. Oops, no one knows how to talk to each other or treat each other. Got to focus on that. Oops, back to the technical skills. Oops, let's fire all of our managers and promote people that have no management experience because they'll be cheaper and whatever the case may be. So you see these kind of back and forths, and it was shifting again, both from, I would say that psychological safety is probably a good kind of a paramount program that we were seeing people ask for. But when they would say psychological safety, or they meant all the things that used to be framed under DEI.
Correct.
Are now psychological. That's the word we're allowed to use.
Yes.
So we were already seeing it
for now,
even before kind of the tide change. And I will say all along, Nova had for us been mentors, big sisters, kind of learning the ropes and learning the hard way a few years ahead of us, having branched off on their own. And so they were always reflectors and advisors for us, and also a place for me to also go and freelance and to continue to keep one hand inside of that work. Like I said, I like the challenging things. And as a white 50-year-old dude, it was very challenging and still is to step into DEI and to own that identity in that space for me. And also just a place where I wanted to grow inside of my own my own development. So I was always freelancing with Nova. We always kept that connection point. And so in this past year, when we were both looking at huge sea changes, and I think it was almost by accident, Scott.
Oh, it was very much by accident.
Scott mentioned, out of a conversation, two people walked away thinking the other one was trying to court them to combine.
Very interesting.
like a couple. It's like, did they just propose to me? Did they just propose to me? I think it was one of those things. And it was the right time. It was a really interesting and unexpected energetic lift. And then I think I'll speak to the fair play side. We started to take it seriously and look at what would need to happen for that to happen, and what would that provide, given that we were seeing things change so drastically, even inside of learning and development directly.
Yep. Yeah. I'm going to tell you my version of this story.
Yes, I would love to hear your version of this.
First of all, I want to back us up and just let the listeners know, since we're pulling back the curtain, that Andy Eninger is one of the most brilliant, like insightful, emotionally intelligent people. So on the last episode, I talked about how we built Nova just trying to sort of collect folks along the way of like the best people we've ever worked with. Think of the smartest people you've worked with at all your jobs, and if you could build a team of them. And Andy is very much in those categories of like, you know, we would build a whole company around Andy. I think that's what we have done, honestly, at this point. Around Andy, if we could. Just, there's no overstating his skills. Sorry, Andy, because now I feel like potential clients are going to listen to this and hire us and then be like, he's underwhelming. But
it's very hard to sit as a Midwesterner. This is very hard to sit inside of.
Yeah. So tell me if you heard this, and we'll give you a different facilitator so that he's not embarrassed. But, you know, to that point, like Fair Play started a couple years after Nova, and like our love and adoration for Scott and Andy knows no bounds. We had great relationships with them, working with them at Second City. They're both like joyful and brilliant in their own ways. I've always had a soft spot for Andy because I heard through the grapevine that when we split off to start Nova, some of the leaders there were mad at us and wanted to trash talk us, and Andy stood up for us and defended our honor and said, I think it's weird that these smart women keep leaving your company and you guys want to blame them. So I've always appreciated that in my heart of hearts. And Scott and I talked a lot because Scott kind of runs the business side of Fair Play and the sales side of it. So he and I would connect like once a month. We had a standing call for years and just compare notes. And we were on very different paths. Like we were experiencing at Nova, you know, what we talked about last time, this like influx of kind of a brand new space around DEI. People didn't know what they want. They didn't know what it was. And so we were having very different experiences, even in our business. We were on the same sort of trajectory, just in very different spaces. Then, yes, we had the call. Scott and I had a call. This is exactly what happened. And he said, it's been great. It's great to have this like thought partnership. You know, we should set up a call with all of the partners, the Fair Play partners and the Nova partners, and really talk about what it would look like to like partner more strategically. And I was like, okay, sounds good. We'll talk later. And so I went to Becca and Tiffany, our other founding partners at Nova, and said, I think Scott wants to merge. In my mind, I said, I think Scott like wants to talk about like bringing the companies together. And we talked through that. We had another call with just the three of us at the Nova side about like, okay, let's set up this call. And here's what we would want. And here's what we think. And we were stoked about it. We got ourselves so like worked up and excited. And we get on this call with the Fair Play team and us. And we're like, okay, great. Here's what we decide. If we're going to merge, it should be X, Y, and Z. And they were like, what are you talking about?
Oh, no. How embarrassing. Oh, my goodness.
Maybe you like share content with that. And we would, you guys.
It's like we just want to be thought partners. What is this?
Yeah. We'd like license content. And we were like, what? No, we thought we were going to become one company. So it was absolutely my misunderstanding.
Oh, no.
But I was like, but could we talk about it though? So it definitely took a minute to get to a place of discussing it. But I mean, I hadn't thought of it until I thought Scott pitched it to me. That's what Scott kept being like, well, tell me, like, how do you see this, this, and this? I'm like, I don't. I thought this was your idea.
Right. You're like, I just wanted to prepare a little bit, but I didn't know.
I think this is important because it makes us sound unstrategic, but it also, I think, hopefully underlines for people, like, you can never, not seize a good opportunity, a good mistake
Sure.
when it
Sure.
comes up.
Happy accidents.
Follow the thread.
Also, that's a good account person that can make you hear what you want to hear.
Oh, this is what Becca said to me. She goes, Scott sold you on an idea because he's a great salesperson.
Yes.
So yeah, totally. He had convinced me of something he wasn't even trying to pitch me on. So we'll see how that works out for him ultimately. But
It's working out great.
that was, I think the energy behind it and the like complete rightness of that moment in time of, let's bring these superpowers together. We're getting back to our roots a little. We spent a long time sort of trying to shed the improv and like Second City-ness of where we came from. Not because it's bad. It's actually great. And like DEI should be woven into everything, but it has such a specific connotation, especially in the L&D space, right? Like improv is like a thing you do once at your retreat, not like a cohesive way of running L&D. But we know from having worked there for 10 years that it actually is an amazing thing to bake into your everyday, just like DEI. But we had spent so long trying to have our own identity as Nova, them as Fair Play, and it just felt like the exact right time to like be stronger together. And so after our initial confusion, we decided to make, a power move and bring it together. We were also, Jasmine, so what we talked about, not moving away from DEI, but recontextualizing it as an ingredient in all of the sauce. And while we were in our heyday, at our peak of some of those programs, we were doing 90% learning. I mean, you know this, right? We've always been a learning company, always.
Bread and butter.
We have other programs outside of that. We have additions, more robust things that we do, assessments, all of these other sort of things that are supplemental to the learning, but it's always been a learning company. So that was very clear to us. And literally in the data, like we actually know this to be a fact. But it wasn't necessarily clear through our branding, and to our clients, it felt like a pivot, even though to us, we knew it was not. But merging with Fair Play kind of brought in that credibility as well of like, this is the space they have been holding down for the last few years. And so now we have their superpowers too. Don't take our word for it, because we've got this L&D like powerhouse coming on board. And I think that helped with the reframing of what we were doing at the time.
That help goes both ways. I think for Fair Play, some of our clients had followed us from our improv background or really liked that of us primarily early on. And then they outgrew it, and being able to merge, change identity, or kind of like transform that identity allows them to see us in new ways and to almost re-present ourselves with the expanded capabilities too.
So now that it's SuperNova, the merger happened in 2025, which was really exciting. And you spoke to a bit about why this was a power move for both Fair Play and for Nova. So collectively, that had to have meant, Andy, that you all have had to decide about what you wanted to do with like DEI topics and things of that nature. You mentioned inclusion being hand in hand sometimes in your trainings that you were having, but when you came over to Nova with the merger, we were deciding to just envelop DEI and just like remove the little sticker that was placed on our shirt. So what do you think about that? And like, what was your thought process about the merger from that perspective?
I will say that all the work I've done with Nova, I was always really proud to be in a DEI forward organization. Like, it meant a lot to me. So as that narrative changed and as we were joining Nova, there's just like a sense of like refinding what it is for me too, inside of that merger, because it's an area that I really love. I find it very mission oriented for me. The equity piece, it always has been, that's always a place where I personally get triggered if I don't do the work, and excited when I can do my personal work, but also work on behalf of others, and be inside of those conversations. But I ultimately see it really being this area of hopefulness. What does it mean to build really great leaders? What does it mean to teach presentation skills from a standpoint where it's just baked into, it's the kale in the smoothie, or it's the smoothie in the kale? I don't know. You choose your metaphor, but it's recognizing that there's power in how I give somebody feedback on how they present themselves, or what executive presence looks like. And you get to ask that follow-up question to really start to unpack, like, where do we define, who defines executive presence? What about that is important? What about that is like carrying or perpetuating narratives? So to blend all of those is a real opportunity. And even if it's something, I mean, we always know the work that we're doing behind the scenes, and a lot of our clients do too. I think there's this, we're in a moment now where the clients that are doing the good work, even the ones that can't say it out loud, they're doing it with a wink. They're doing it with this like shared understanding that we're still moving this awareness forward. We're finding ways to make leaders into better, more aware and self-aware humans as well. So it's transforming and evolving in a lot of ways, but I think fundamentally it hasn't, the energy hasn't gone out of it.
I love that, because the way you're talking about it, Andy, is making me think, at least one thing we've kept from all of those years of like hard-hitting DEI work and training in that is that the one thing they can't take away from the moment is that we never have to go into these conversations or skill building and not ask those questions, right? So there was a whole lot of time in the workspaces where it would just be assumed that this way of presenting was best for all people, or this benefits everyone, that we're all having the same experience. And I think we know that that's not true, and we never have to go back to that again. And we can infuse that nuance and like disruption of that status quo in everything we do, and challenge that there's one right way to do these things in leadership. And if we can be giving leaders that perspective, that lens of, it is not one answer for you, it's going to be multiple choice points that you have to navigate. I mean, that's DEI, right? It's improv too. It's also DEI. It's also human stuff. So, I appreciate that, and that there's nothing that can ever take that multiple perspectives away from the work that we do. Again, back, no matter what you call it, how you do it.
Great. I agree.
Andy, you are in and out. Because you're facilitating, you're talking to so many clients, you're building their custom programs with Fair Play, and now as Nova, you're in and out of a ton of different organizations. And everything we're talking about that led to the merger, and as we're sitting right here, and as we go forward, that the podcast will be talking about and touching on, is in a whole different space. The working world has changed.
Yes.
Things are topsy-turvy. You've got AI, as we said at the top, and return to office and hiring freezes, but then also hiring spikes. And what are you seeing in these organizations that, like with some of the big guys, that parallel what Nova has gone through? Like how has that arc looked in some of these other organizations? Where are they at now? What are some of the biggest things that you're seeing with like Gen Z in the workplace? All of those questions I'm asking you in one question, like an expert interviewer.
There are so many strands going on right now, and the topsy-turvy piece is the big one. The rules that applied before suddenly don't apply. Which is true for in Nova, in the marketplace that we're seeing, and the conversations that we're having, and what we tended to expect that seemed to hold fast for a while. And now those things they're just not always true. Yeah. I mean, and I think that it's the same for a lot of the organizations that we work with, where you start to build the ship in a certain direction, and you do a lot of helping people, like maybe generations that are newer to the workplace, try to help them to like understand, here's what work looks like. And then suddenly it changes, and a whole area of people are suddenly let go or removed. And then those new people don't necessarily have the role models, or what they were just told, here's how it's going to be, suddenly changes. And I think it's teaching everyone how to be resilient, but I think that that's an overused term. But kind of functionally, what that looks like is, are you able to to change and then change again? And then can you change again? And can you get faster at noticing the new patterns and working with those and recognizing it's never going to feel comfortable. It's never going to feel like, okay, I have my bearings now. Nope, it's going to be changing again. And everyone is recognizing it. It's not only what people are starting to look for. We're starting to see it like even in indicators of from behavioral interviewing that people are looking at. Like they're looking at the ability to change again, change as the AI shifts the way that work happens, to be change ready. How you can say it so many different ways, but that's the thing. And I think it goes for me too. I find myself like having to push myself, and I've always prided myself on being able to change, but also given my ADHD, I need support systems that are pretty locked in, and it's hard to move through that change. And I see it also for our clients as well.
Yeah. No, that I always say about myself that I love change. I really do. Like love.
You
change,
always say that.
I hate transition. Which are two different things, right?
That is so true.
Part and parcel of, I think, what we see in these workspaces, right? Like you could roll with the change, but then there's the whole uncomfortable transition to get through. It's not just like, it's a new day. I mean, we're doing that at Nova, right? We are actually in a transition phase. It doesn't just happen because you push an email blast out that says we've merged, we're this, we do this. All these things we talk about is part of the transition, the chrysalis, the whatever gross bug thing we want to talk about. It is a process, and the process I am deeply uncomfortable with often because I want to get to the dopamine hit of the change itself.
Of the change,
and, I think we're seeing that in these workplaces. We're seeing younger generations that are more used to the rug pulled out from under them. They were in college during COVID, or the world shuts down. This happens. It's par for the course. Older generations who are still trying to grab on to some solid ground where it seems like solid ground is not with us in the moment. And then everybody's sort of reacting from an emotional place around those things. So it's a lot to manage, I think, in these workspaces for sure.
And then on top of that, you have the aspects where it's like, well, don't talk about DEI, where it's like we need it more than ever right now, but okay. But yeah, everyone's having to pivot for sure.
I think that's one of the reasons. And the thing that makes me hopeful is that the smart people are recognizing that it's those fundamental skills that save the day in these moments, the ability to talk to other people, to articulate your feelings and convey your feelings, that emotional intelligence, the ability to just package information, to take a moment, like all those things that I think if you haven't trained those or if you haven't supported those, then people aren't going to be able to move through change. It's also, I think, for me, I'll say it's why Nova is able to kind of move with the moment. I always say of the people that I work with at Nova, I've never worked with more competent people in my life. And that competence isn't all just like technical ability. It's also the ability to hold space at the beginning of a meeting to check in, like what's going on? How are you doing? What's something that brings you light right now? It's the ability to say the hard thing and to have those conversations. Those fundamental skills are so in place that, and I think that is a parallel that I see to some of the clients and some of the organizations that are succeeding or at least moving through it.
Well, thank you, Andy. This has been great. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate that. All right, everyone, that's looping you in for today. And if this episode sparked a new way of seeing common challenges, share it with someone you like and respect. Also, follow us anywhere that podcasts are up and going, and rate us, do all the things, including leaving us a raving review on Apple. And if you thought this was terrible, share it with someone you hate. And so for our next episode, we're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of things. Now that you have the context of who we are and all of the amazing people behind us, we'll be diving deep in and starting to figure this mess out. So we'll talk to you next time. Thank you, Andy.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.